going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're continuing with our 32-team 7-round mock draft series for the 2020 NFL Draft by now taking a look at the team that holds the number 10 pick in this draft. Maybe the most disappointing team from last season based upon preseason expectations, and that is Cleveland with a brand new head coach, Kevin Stefanski, taking over. Freddie Kitchens just completely out of his depth. It showed last season. And really the fact that most Brown fans, if you're watching, pay attention to the channel, I didn't really believe in the Browns. I thought they were overrated just because of their tackles alone, the worst two starting tackles I thought in the NFL. But, you know, the fact that most people thought the Browns would be finally the year they might sneak in the playoffs. The most memorable thing that happened was Myles Garrett smashing Mason Rudolph over the head with a helmet. So, what have they done in free agency so far to set up a successful brand new debut freshman season for Stefanski? How is everything setting up here for the draft? Well, let's take a look here through the power of Madden. So when you look at the offense for the Cleveland Browns, they didn't really lose a whole lot, to be honest with you. No more Hollywood Higgins, but you still got Baker Mayfield. You got Chubb and Kareem Hunt, Odell and Jarvis Landry. I think you still could use an outside wide receiver for sure that can come in and complement these two, which maybe we'll be able to add one of those during the draft. You look at the offensive line, they assured one of the tackle spots. I think he'll move to left tackle, which is where he played at Michigan State, in Jack Conklin, paying him big money to come over from the Tennessee Titans. They paid big money for Austin Hooper, who is just, you look at Njoku, still a developmental tight end, still a tight end with a high ceiling, but he had a lot of drops. You look at Austin Hooper, one of the most surest set of hands at the tight end position. So they now have a lot of weapons, and a guy like Njoku is such a good athlete, you could probably line him up in some wide receiver sets as well, even though I do think they do need to bring in another wide receiver, and we're not just paying attention to Madden. We all know Damian Ratley's a beast in Madden. Hooper and Conklin, the big additions on the offense. Clearly, I think they need to add and develop the right-hand side of this offensive line as well. Flipping to the defense, so the front four is pretty damn good. You got Myles Garrett, Sheldon Richardson, Larry Ogunjobi, and Olivier Vernon. They brought in Adrian Claiborne and Andrew Billings in free agency, just adding a lot of depth. That is a really, really good front four with depth, one of the best in the AFC. You look at the secondary, they got Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams, two really good young corners to build around. They brought in Carl Joseph, who I think will be free safety for them. Really liked his tape coming out of West Virginia. I hope maybe a change of scenery will do him well. They do have Sendejo, who's awful. I think at best he's a special teamer because he's just such a dangerous player. I don't think you can pencil him in as a comfortable starter, but he's not, he's not nothing, I suppose. But the contract they gave him was like $2 million, so he's gonna be more so a rotational guy, third safety and nickel. So if I'm looking at this, definitely could look at a corner, definitely could look at a strong safety. And then you look at the linebacking core, you got Mack Wilson, who I can't believe slipped to them. I think it was like the 5th round. I was so mad the Eagles didn't draft him. And he turned out and emerged himself as a really nice starter. They got Goodson coming over from the Green Bay Packers. Taki out of BYU. I think it's out of BYU. He might actually be penciled in as a starter as well. No more Joe Schobert. He went off and got paid by the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think linebacker is another position they could potentially look at in investing, and we will see me try to address that during the 7-round mock. So ultimately, the Browns, they did spend a lot of money. They did get better. They absolutely had to land a tackle, I thought, in this free agency period, and they did in Jack Conklin. So if they can land another one in the draft, this offense should be good in Baker Mayfield's 3rd year. Enough that he can make some plays, get a wide receiver sprinkled in there as well, and then the defense, obviously led by Myles Garrett, as long as he can stay on the field. This is a team, I think the Browns next year are going to be better than they were this year on paper as well. And we will see. But let's get into the mock draft and see if the draft is enough when all is said and done to make the Cleveland Browns contenders in the AFC. So we are here in the mock draft, and at pick 10, very popular pick for the Browns if you look around some mock drafts, but it makes the most sense. I am selecting Jedrick Wills, offensive tackle from Alabama. 6'5", 320. If I'm a Browns fan, I don't care about the redundancy of this pick. It is exactly what they need, and he should be a day one plug-and-play starter at right tackle to complement the big free agency signing of Jack Conklin. He's a powerful blocker with elite footwork. Reminds me a lot of a better version of what Cody Ford was last year coming out of Oklahoma. I had a first-round grade on Cody Ford. Went very early in the 2nd round to the Buffalo Bills. I'm pretty sure he started for them for a lot of the games in his rookie season. And Wills is just a better version of that. A little bit more powerful, a little bit better athlete, a little bit better footwork. He's an old school style, nasty lineman and an excellent upgrade for a team in Cleveland who last year on paper I thought, put on the field and on tape had the worst starting offensive tackles in the National Football League. And it showed up last year. That O-line was not good, and it was amazing. Nick Chubb, I mean, even not just the tackles, the guard play, they have name value in Bitonio and Treader. The guard play wasn't even that good. So everything needs to get better on the offensive line, and getting big money on Jack Conklin and then also using your first-round pick on Wills is going to go a long way to improving that offensive line. Just imagine how good Nick Chubb will be, how good Baker Mayfield will be, but more so how much better Nick Chubb will be if he actually has really good run blocking. And that's exactly what you're going to get with Jedrick Wills. Going to the second round at pick 41, one of my biggest slippers. This is not like indicative of how I feel about him or anything like that. It's just this is what happened in the mock draft. He was the biggest name. At pick 41, I'm selecting Xavier McKinney, the safety from Alabama. 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. Now, one thing we know if we're looking at trends in the draft is that middle linebackers, off-ball linebackers, and safeties always slip. 2 years ago, I think it was, Ronnie Harrison, the safety from Alabama, I had a first-round grade on him. He went like the third round to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's now a starter there. I feel like Xavier McKinney, for no fault of his own, just because of positional value and other teams' needs, is still available at pick 41. It is an absolute value pick here. He's a versatile safety. He is better than Sendejo. I think he's a day one starter at strong safety. He's a strong tackler for his size. He tackles like a guy that's 225. He tackles like an old school strong safety. He's a very smart football player, does not make a lot of mistakes. You could see him anytime you watch Alabama play. You look at some of the all-22 constantly. He literally looks like he's wearing the microphone inside his helmet, the way he's trying to control the defense. Athletically, there was some questions and concerns, which could also, add in the fact that he slips. He ran a 4.63, which is just not that great. He looked faster than that on tape, which is benefit. I don't think too many teams are going to put that 4.63 that he ran at the combine as a red flag, but it's definitely something to note when you're trying to compare him to some of the other safeties in this class that are around that range, like the small school Jeremy Chin and Kyle Duggar, who are just insane athletes that might just be a little bit higher of a ceiling. But I think Xavier McKinney is a damn good football player and offers long-term stability to the Cleveland Browns safety core that they just haven't had. I mean, look at his career. The last 2 years at Alabama, 170 tackles, 12 TFLs, 6 sacks, 5 picks, 15 pass breakups, and 6 forced fumbles. He's incredibly well-rounded, and I think a day one starter, an insane Alabama value pick, much like Mack Wilson was last year to the Cleveland Browns. Going to the third round at pick 74, I'm selecting Troy Dye, linebacker from Oregon, 6'4", 225, an uber athletic linebacker who is as good sideline to sideline as any linebacker in this class. Now, he's a polarizing prospect. He's kind of literally like the linebacking version of Justin Herbert in a way. There's sometimes Troy Dye looks like, wow, this guy might be the best linebacker prospect in the draft. There's other times I just can't not get out of my head in the Wisconsin-Oregon bowl game. Troy Dye got absolutely destroyed by Quintez Cephas. Really strong, really good slot wide receiver. But I was just like, you cannot. At 6'4", 225, you have a massive size advantage on a lot of the linebackers in the class. You cannot get ran over by a slot wide receiver the way he did. It literally looked like Earl Campbell destroyed him. So like with Troy Dye, there is certain plays that make you go, wow. I've been watching him play for the last 3 years. He's been a 4-year starter. And then there's other plays like, man. So he's a guy that has a high ceiling, needs to get everything, the edges smooth and round up. But when you look at the Cleveland Browns, not a lot of depth at linebacker. I think a guy like Troy Dye is worth the investment in the third round. Should make a push to maybe potentially start at Sam. But over a 4-year career, 391 tackles, 41.5 TFLs, 13 sacks, 5 picks for the Oregon linebacker. I think with his athletic profile alone, very, very high upside. And again, I think it's well worth the risk for the Browns here in the third round. Going to their second third-round pick, at 97, I'm selecting Damian Lewis, guard from LSU, 6'2", 330. First thing, I don't like doing a whole lot of comps when I get into these mock drafts, but he looks like Will Hernandez did coming out of UTEP. And Will Hernandez went in the second round and is now a starting guard for the New York Giants. Damian Lewis, powerful mauler in the run game, should add immediate competition to an offensive line that across the board was not good enough last season. Now, you look at guard, you see they have Bitonio and their other starter. Let's see, who was it? Browns depth chart here. So then Joe Bitonio will be left guard, and then at right guard you have Wyatt Teller. You have Drew Forbes, a 6th rounder. They traded for Teller from the Bills. He's an average. I think you get a lot more upside with a guy in Damian Lewis, and Damian Lewis, fits into establishing the power run that they were trying to do last year with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So I think Damian Lewis, a big time upgrade that needs to challenge for depth to let the cream rise to the crop here for the Cleveland Browns, because their offensive line was unacceptable last season. Going to the 4th round at pick 115, I was selecting Antonio Gandy Golden, wide receiver from Liberty, 6'4", 220. Again, I get a lot of Courtland Sutton vibes from him. I don't like the player comps right in these type of videos, but much like Will Hernandez and Damian Lewis, I think when we look at Jedrick Wills and Cody Ford, Gandy Golden gives me a lot of Courtland Sutton. Their tape looks the same, height, weight, speed, a little bit better athlete for Courtland Sutton. But, the highlight reel catches of Gandy Golden, the fact that he carried a small school in more games, he's an uber-aggressive catcher, complements Jarvis Landry in the slot and Odell on the outside because he's that big-bodied possession guy, and should absolutely, I think, in my opinion, win that wide receiver 3 gig that was previously held by Hollywood Higgins. I think at 2 years at Liberty, 150 catches, 2,400 yards, and 20 touchdowns, mixed with, if you just look at some sort of chop up with some copyright rap music, the highlight reel catches, the big wow playability is there. And I think a team looking for that third wide receiver, a guy like AGG, could come in and compete with the Taywan Taylors and the Damian Ratleys. Going to the 6th round at pick 187, I was selecting Jonathan Garvin, defensive end from Miami, 6'4", 260. Now, it looks like the last time they dipped in a Miami defensive end, Chad Thomas in the 3rd round, didn't quite work out, but I think a 6th-round pick on a guy like Garvin who has upside, almost any scouting report you can read says this guy's ceiling is very, very high, but you need to tap into it. So again, trusting that someone like Joe Woods will be able to develop him. I think he is a guy that showed a lot of flash at the U. 28 TFLs in the last 2 years, just makes plays in the backfield, needs to get stronger, but I think he's one of the better value picks day 3 and a great rotational piece as a rookie to compete for that DN4, DN5 spot. Not as much immediate rotation that help they need because they did bring in Adrian Claiborne as a veteran, but I think you can have him come in and compete with the Chad Thomases, the Porter Gustins for the back end of that 53 as a rotational guy. And then finishing out the draft in the 7th round at pick 244, I was selecting Stanley Thomas Oliver, corner from Florida International, 6 feet tall, 195 pounds, a developmental outside corner that tested well at the combine, running a 4.48. He's a converted wide receiver, and he attacks the ball in the air like one. Not gonna lie, haven't watched a whole lot of Florida International tape. I watched a little bit of James Morgan because, for the Eagles, they kind of need a developmental quarterback. He could be interesting. But I have watched a couple of his cut-ups, and you definitely see the wide receiver mindset when he is playing a 50-50 ball in the air. He's very aggressive, sometimes gets beat, but the way he tested the combine that shows his athletic profile, there's enough ceiling there in the 7th round that you could say, hey, this is a guy that, almost any wide receiver that converts the corner is going to get those Richard Sherman. Maybe the next Richard Sherman. I'm not going to put that label on him there, but there's always that kind of thinking in the back of the mind. Because he's a good athlete and he's aggressive, he's going to be a perfect candidate at the back end of that roster in the 7th round to be able to stick on as a special teamer, as a rookie, while he develops a skill set to develop into a solid corner. So there you go, guys. That is my 7-round mock draft here for the Cleveland Browns. As always, let me know in the comment section below if you agree or disagree with any of the picks. Brown fans, how do you think I did for your team? Let me know. And that'll do it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching. Until next time, it's C4 saying like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys back here tomorrow. Peace out.